Well, let's get a little tactical,
Uh-huh.
right? Because I think a big part of a tech executive role is having to build business cases, right? Because these are not cheap projects, right? They're $1 million kind of projects, whether it's SAP or AI or automation, robots, like all those projects need a business case to be prepared. It has to go through the board, it has to go through the CFO approval, all that, right? In building the business cases for a lot of your projects, Ashish, what are some of the common factors that needs to go into a business case to justify a tech investment?
Yeah. The way I see when I write business case, I expect there are three main things in a business case. One is obviously what is the objective of the business case? Is the objective to improve forecast accuracy? Whether the objective is to improve the floor efficiency? So the objective has to be very clear as to what are we as a company going after. Two, how is that objective really fitting into our overall strategy? Because in the end, that's what matters the most, right? Because companies are driven by their mission and vision statements, but the mission and vision statement is supported by the strategies they follow. So that's the second piece I got. And the third thing is the value piece. Is if an investment, it's like any other investment you do, whether at my home, right? If I'm going to invest in beautifying or making my kitchen better, I need to get some value out of it. So the value piece is so important. So the three things that I always look at is the objective, the strategy, and the value. And as long as we are true to ourselves and we put the best efforts in defining correctly these three things in a business case, I feel that, I feel very confident that it can pass through a senior executive leadership review and or even a board review.
Yeah. And I think it's so important what you just said, because for anybody that's not experienced around that, they might go to the tech side and they see, oh, a shiny new toy, a shiny new tool, and they're chasing that versus what you said. You have to go back to the business and the objectives and what's going to help the business grow.
Oh, absolutely. And this is why I said most technology organizations in companies, obviously not the pure tech organizations are developing tech, but I call ourselves as we are deploying tech for the business benefit. So if you're going to deploy tech for business benefit, I feel like the business has a bigger say, and we are there to help them grow. As I go back, is whether we're talking to sales and we're helping them grow their sales, or we're talking to supply chain and we're optimizing their supply chain spend or with supply chain productivity, improving the throughput, whatever their goals are. So it's very critical that those goals, the work we do, are aligned with the goals they have and the strategy. Strategy both the business and the technology has.
So you've obviously worked with a lot of huge enterprise kind of organizations, right? But there are also in our audience kind of mid-sized companies. Any kind of different advice you might give to a mid-sized company or a manufacturer or somebody along that supply chain where they don't have as big of a budget or they have fewer resources to put in a big ERP system or any an AI projects? What kind of different advice would you give to mid-size firms?
I think when it comes to mid-size, it always becomes, there is a lesser cash to deploy compared to the bigger size companies, right? So this process of, I call making sure holding yourself true to your objective, strategy, and value, because even more critical for them. Because in the end, any spend dollar, if it doesn't return value, I'm pretty sure the CFO of that organization and the senior leaders are going to come back, because everybody in the company is asking for funding just like our kids, right? So it's imperative that wherever the funds are deployed, CFOs and the finance organizations and senior execs are typically looking at where best we can get the return. So my suggestion or my advice to all the mid-sized companies is you should have a thorough lens of looking at your business cases through these three factors I call, right? What's the objective, what's your strategy, and then finally, what's the value? Because if those three things falter. We typically end up spending money on technologies that don't yield any benefits. And ultimately, technology departments is the one at the receiving end.
Well, I work with a lot of IT consulting firms and vendors, right? And they're always obviously trying to pitch services, consulting services or products to Fortune 500 companies, right? So when you go about looking for consulting partners or vendors, are there certain criteria you always look for before you choose a vendor? Or what are some specific things that they should be working on if they're pitching?
Yeah, I think when it comes to pitching to a Fortune 500 set of companies, in my opinion,
especially to a CIO or
yeah,
a tech executive.
Absolutely. The key thing is it's what's the value proposition that they're offering? Because look at it. I mean, if I'm going to implement a new ERP system, I can tell you there is a range of companies that can offer that service I call, right? So you can take the top 5 or top 4 they used to call consulting companies to the smallest one. Everybody has that capability today, right? So what is the difference or what is the value add that your company is bringing to the table when you're pitching for that new ERP implementation project? That's the first one.
What would a value add? What would be an example?
So again, if I would have to say for an ERP takes, I'm just making up, 18 months and $1 million. So I'm giving an example. A better value proposition is, how can I do the same project in 18 months and $800,000? Or it could be that I can do that in 16 months and $1 million. So those are the kind
time and money.
It's all about time and money, because in the end, we are looking, as I said, we are implementing these capabilities, whether it is ERPs, whether it is automation, whether it is AI, for the benefit of the business. The faster we can get and give these, I call, capabilities in hands of business, the faster we can realize those benefits. Now, I'm not saying that you can do it in 9 months or 8 months. That's impossible to do. But at least expect some value addition that you bring to the table. Or it's not just time and money too. It's the proven capability. For example, some organizations have never had a failed implementation on their sleeves or on their resume, I call, right? So how do you make sure that you bring that confidence and you share that confidence with a senior IT leader who feels compelled or who feels, I would say, convinced that, yeah, this is an organization that can help deliver his or her goals.
Do you ever, so obviously skills, capabilities, value add, super important. Do you also look for certain characteristics or personalities or values in your vendors?
Absolutely. I think the key things that we look for beyond skills and value is also their ways of working. Because most of the times when we bring in consultants from outside, and not everybody, but I would say some of their leaders get exposed to our business partners or business organizations. So we also have to be careful on who and what we bring to the table, because in the end, it's the IT organization or technology organizations' credibility on the line on bringing folks who can work with, a spectrum of people, whether it is a C-suite leader all the way down to, I call a picker on a shop floor. So it is so critical to bring these things. Making sure that we get these right people who can work together with our business and with our technology organizations.
If you think back to all the partners that you've kind of worked with over the years, you don't have to name names or companies, but can you think of an example where it was just like the perfect partnership and why it was so great for you working with them?
So in my Ecolab days, as I said, I was setting up an organization for supply chain analytics. And obviously, I had an idea and I had my strategy and I had aligned that with my business leadership. But I also wanted a third party's opinion who have done this done this from ground up, and not just once, like I was doing for the first time. They've done it multiple times. So bringing in a third-party consultant, not just to convince me, convince my leadership, but also convince business leadership that it was the right money spent. And more importantly, when you are setting organizations overseas, it is even more important because you need people who have experience setting these on the ground there, because we're sitting over here in the United States, I call, which is thousands of miles away. We have a notion of how countries and workforce in those countries operate, but until you land there and until you have that experience, you will never understand how to set organizations. So we have actually, and that was my greatest experience of leveraging a third party organization to not to I would say double check my strategy, but give some and provide some consulting on what are the do's and don'ts when you set these organizations ground up, both here on site and then offshore.
Right. And they can see things that we haven't experienced yet, right? And provide that extra
Absolutely.
perspective.
Yeah.